So welcome to today's update video. In the Eastern Pacific, we now have, obviously let me refresh this page, because obviously we now have what was investing money yesterday, was upgrading to a tropical depression today, was upgrading to a tropical depression at 9Z today, and it has a 21Z advisory based on an ASCAP pass, which showed a clear area of 35 knot bugs. The National Hurricane Center upgraded tropical storm Pamela to about 40 knots or 45 miles per hour. The minimum central pressure is at 1,005 millibars, located at 15.5 N or 105.9 W. It's moving west-northwest at around 13 knots, 15 miles per hour. Pamela. The reason the National Hurricane Center went to 40 knots is because the ASCAT instrument generally has a small low bias due to its resolution. So a wide area of 35 knots, for instance, is likely supportive of an intensity of 40 knots. Overall, the environmental system still isn't perfect. You still have the displaced up-level anticyclone, and you have the trough currently providing a severe water outbreak over the Great Plains. Both these factors are imparting some northerly shear over the system, and that's kind of evident with the satellite signature. As you can see, evident with the satellite signature. As you can see the system is still pulsating convection. And the overall cloud shape is probably best evident on black to black, but the overall cloud shapes of the system are relatively ragged and not smooth. There's no true curved, even though there have been some hints that there's no well-defined curved band signature yet that would indicate of a stronger tropical storm. So it's likely still like a 40 to 45 knot tropical storm. However, the system does have some deep convection already, and the wind shear has been, and the overall environment is still highly divergent. And in fact, the system has been trying to get a little bit better organized based on the increase of convection activity near the center. And it's indicative of a more true, that central dense overcast near the center that is developing rather than being displaced to the south of the center, which the old central dense overcast was. Overall, the upper level alpha pattern still isn't perfect. You can see it's still tricked out of the north, which is expected given the northerly wind shear environment the system is in. But conditions, however, are still forecasted to remain pretty favorable for development. Take a look at, for example, taking a look at the point area average soundings. Hopefully this will load, but yeah, we're taking with the point area average sounds of the 18Z GFS, for example. They're showing literally 1 knot of wind shear in about 18 hours. So, and show 1 knot of wind shear and relative humidity values are about 93%. Which is likely to allow for a faster rate of strengthening. Of course, we likely won't see the levels of rapid intensification we saw with hurricanes Patricia and Willa anytime in the immediate future, because the system still, from my understanding, there haven't been any microwave passes that I'm aware of, but from my understanding, the system still likely is still in a forward development cycle in its primitive phases, especially in fact just now. As I mentioned earlier, the system Pamela is just now trying to get vertically stacked. But I think once the hosts get more vertically stacked and develop strong central deconvection near the center, once that happens close to the center, and once it becomes symmetrically embedded, so the center becomes more symmetrically embedded within the central dense overcast, then I think some likely begin to build an inner core, and I expect this process to happen overnight into early tomorrow. And then the next sort of step in the intensification phase is whether any dry air gets let in. And the storm is too banding dominant. The system likely not reach its full potential because the banding dominant leaves the core vulnerable to dry air intrusions. But overall vertical instability is relatively high as it usually is. Vertical instability is relatively high as it usually is this time of year. So as a result, conditions are still high. Conditions are likely to be very favorable for strengthening. Now the question is how much strengthening. The standard rate of intensification of tropical cyclones, based on a research paper that came out from that explained the Dvorak technique, suggests that this rate's about 1 Dvorak number per day, with a faster rate of intensification being about 1.5 T numbers per day. The system right now is probably between a T2.5 or a T.30 on the Dvorak scale, and that would suggest that the system can probably make it to minimal hurricane strength by this time tomorrow, and then potentially be making a run at major hurricane strength. Be making a run up and continue extra drop like that for another day, making it probably reaching major hurricane strength by this time on Tuesday, and given the favorable trough interaction that I've noted in my last couple of videos, that the door is probably still open for a very high level of a peak intensity. Hold on, he was acting slow, but pulling up the latest GFS, the models haven't really budged too much. If anything, the HMON and HWORD have trended towards a little bit more of a stronger, system, and I'm trending more towards a stronger system at landfall. Believe this will show what the this each wolf trend towards a little bit of a strong system at landfall. Even though there's historically speaking, these systems tend to weaken pretty sharply once they get within a few hours of landfall. I think it's a combination of topographical factors from the very high Mexican mountains, and the fact these sort of setups generally prompt. Generally prompt an eventual increase of wind shear once they fully start recurvature, despite the overall highly divergent setup. You can see at the 18Z GFS, they bring this, for example, this to about 942 millibars. We've had some GFS runs very similar to the 930s, but I mean, at this area of the water, 942 millibars, considering the resolution would probably support a system between 120 and 130. Between about 120 and 135 knots of intensity. Of course, the GFS and for that matter, if the lesser extent the HWORD and HMON aren't really good at forecasting inner core dynamics that I think likely determine the intensity once the inner core dynamics such as dry air intrusions, IR replacement cycles, whether storm develops a larger eye or a pinhole eye. Those sorts of things that could control the intensity once the system gets an inner core established, which, as I mentioned earlier, will probably happen sometime into the overnight hours and into tomorrow night. The peak intensity I kind of expect to be between 6Z and 18Z on Wednesday, assuming that the wind shear increase happens a little bit further than the models, a little bit earlier on than the models are currently showing. There's also some disagreement on how fast this will be, how fast this system will make landfall as the 12Z European in particular. I don't know if I'll show it, but the 12Z European in particular showed a very fast recurvature into Mexico, while like the 12Z GFS have been showing it a little bit, showing recurvature a little bit slower, and the system remaining offshore due about 2 to 3Z on Thursday. I think the models have trended a little bit more to a fast solution, but I mean the CMC also on board with, I believe, the latest European run as well. Anyway, I mean, impact-wise, even though there's still uncertainty, there's still some uncertainty on how strong this will be at landfall. I can see anywhere from like a Category 1 to a Category 4, depending on how strong this gets, and depending on the timing of the shear increase, maybe even a Category 5. The tracks are becoming a much better agreement on a landfall in south central Sinaloa. It's probably somewhere near Mazatlán. Believe the European is still a little bit further north than the GFS. And I think it's fairly likely, at least likely, that at this point, assuming there's a larger inner core, assuming that the core of the system expands radially due to the likely IR replacement cycle, I think there's a good chance that the city of Mazatlan likely will experience the inner core of this hurricane. But and I do think much of the Sinaloa coast from about south of maybe not. I think Jalisco and Colima and even Narat for the most part are going to avoid the storm. But I do think anywhere from southern and central Sinaloa up our way to probably not Las Muchas. I think Las Muchas is probably safe at this point, given how tightly clustered the models are. But anywhere in southern and central Sinaloa is likely to the brunt of a very powerful hurricane on Wednesday. There's some slight disagreement on what's going to happen track-wise. I mean, the plan is, of course, in addition to the typical flooding threat, there's also going to be a wind threat, and probably some sort of surge threat as well. Though at this point it's a little bit premature to get more precise. Anyway, that's for today's video. Hope you guys learned something from it. Bye.